When I finally hung up my work boots after 40 years, I thought I'd feel free. Instead, I felt empty. My name's Jack Callahan, and like many veterans, I spent decades trying to outrun the memories of Vietnam by keeping busy. Work, family, obligations, they filled the spaces where the questions might creep in. What's it all for? What now? Then suddenly, retirement arrived. The busy disappeared. And there I was, a 68-year-old Vietnam vet with nothing but time and the weight of memories I'd been avoiding since 1971. What I'm about to share isn't just my story. It's about how I found purpose when I thought my useful days were behind me. And maybe, just maybe, it'll help you find yours too. Nobody tells you how disorienting retirement can be. One day you're essential, people need you, depend on you, value your experience. The next day, silence. Your phone stops ringing. Your expertise isn't required. Your schedule, which has structured your life for decades, suddenly vanishes. I remember sitting in my den about 3 weeks after retirement, staring at the wall. My wife Linda found me there just staring. "What are you doing, Jack?" she asked. I didn't have an answer. I honestly didn't know. See, in Vietnam, I'd been a medic. Every second mattered. Every decision could mean life or death. And even though I'd left that behind long ago and built a career in construction management, I'd always defined myself by being needed, by solving problems, by showing up when it counted. Now who needed me? My kids were grown with families of their own. My grandkids were sweet, but busy with their own lives. My colleagues had already adjusted to my absence. I felt like a ghost in my own life. The statistics say I'm not alone. About 40% of retirees experience some form of depression or anxiety in the first year after leaving work. For veterans, that number climbs even higher. We're trained to have a mission, to serve a purpose greater than ourselves. When that disappears, we can feel adrift. I'd like to tell you, I handled it well. That I immediately found healthy hobbies and created a fulfilling retirement plan. But that would be a lie. Instead, I slipped into habits that seemed harmless at first. I'd start watching TV after breakfast and realize I was still there at dinner time. I'd have a drink to help me sleep, then start earlier in the day just to take the edge off. Linda noticed, of course. She tried to get me involved in things, gardening, clubs, veteran groups, church activities. I'd go once or twice, then find excuses not to return. Nothing felt meaningful. Nothing felt necessary. The turning point came about 6 months in. My oldest grandson, Tyler, was staying with us for the weekend. He's always been curious, always asking questions. He found me in my usual spot on the recliner and asked, "Grandpa, what did you do today?" I opened my mouth to answer and nothing came out. I had no answer. I literally couldn't remember a single worthwhile thing I'd done that day, or the day before, or the entire week. The look on his face, part confusion, part disappointment, hit me harder than any combat experience ever had. I saw myself through his eyes, a shell of a man wasting the time he had left. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Tyler's question. What did I do today? What could I do tomorrow? What was I still capable of contributing? The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in months. I got up early, showered, and put on real clothes instead of sweats. Linda noticed immediately. "Going somewhere?" she asked, trying not to sound too hopeful. Yeah, I said. The VA. I'd been avoiding the VA for years. Too many memories, too many reminders. But something pulled me there that day. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was that I knew it was a place where being a Vietnam vet wasn't something I had to explain or apologize for. In the waiting room, I noticed a flyer. Veteran volunteers needed. Help fellow vets navigate the system. It wasn't fancy or particularly well designed. Just a simple call for those who understood the VA bureaucracy to help others find their way through it. I took the flyer, folded it, put it in my pocket. I didn't commit to anything that day. But I kept the paper. And for the first time in months, I felt a tiny spark of something. Not quite purpose yet. Maybe just possibility. A week later, I called the number. The woman who answered sounded overwhelmed and grateful that I'd reached out. "Can you start Tuesday?" she asked. I hadn't even told her my qualifications or availability. That's how desperate they were for help. "Tuesday," I agreed, already feeling a knot of anxiety. What did I know about the modern VA system? What if I couldn't help? What if I made things worse? But Tuesday came and I went. And that decision, that simple, terrifying decision to show up, changed everything. My first client was a young Iraq veteran named Marcus. He couldn't have been more than 30, but his eyes looked ancient. I recognized that look. I'd seen it in my own mirror for decades. Marcus was trying to get treatment for PTSD and running into wall after wall of paperwork and requirements. He was frustrated, exhausted, and close to giving up. "They don't want to help us," he said bitterly. "They just want us to go away." I felt something stir in me then, not just sympathy, but a sense of familiarity and responsibility. "Yeah, the system's a maze," I told him. "But I've got nothing but time, and I'm pretty stubborn. Let's figure this out together." We spent 3 hours that day navigating forms, making calls, documenting his symptoms and service history. By the end, we had a plan and his next 3 appointments scheduled. As he was leaving, Marcus paused. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "You don't even know me." The question caught me off guard. Why was I doing this? Because someone should have done it for me, I finally said. And because I can. It wasn't a profound answer. But it was honest. And as I said it, I realized it was true. I could do this. After feeling useless for so long, here was something concrete I could offer. My time, my experience, my understanding of both the military and the frustrating systems that followed. That night, I slept better than I had in months. What started as volunteering 2 days, a week quickly expanded. I found myself at the VA almost daily, helping veterans of all ages navigate not just healthcare but housing assistance, education benefits, disability claims, the whole complicated web. I wasn't an expert in any of it. But I was willing to learn, to make calls, to sit with people while they waited, to translate bureaucratic language into plain English. Most importantly, I was willing to listen to their stories, stories that often echoed my own. About 3 months in, the VA coordinator called me into her office. I thought maybe I'd overstepped or made a mistake. Instead, she said, "We've had 5 different vets ask specifically for you this week. Whatever you're doing, it's working." What was I doing? Nothing special, I thought. Just showing up. Just treating people like their time and pain mattered. But apparently, that was enough. And the more I helped others find their way, the more I found my own path forward. The drinking stopped, not because I made a conscious decision, but because I needed to be clear-headed for my vets, as I'd started calling them. The TV gathered dust. I started reading again, researching benefits and programs, learning about the specific challenges facing veterans of different eras. Linda noticed the change. "You're back," she said one evening, touching my face gently. "Was I gone?" I asked. "For a while there, yeah. You were here, but you weren't present. Now you are." She was right. I was present again, not just at home, but in my own life. I had purpose. I mattered. Here's something they don't tell you about finding your purpose. It rarely comes alone. Purpose brings people, and people bring connection. As my volunteer work expanded, I found myself surrounded by a community I never expected to have at this stage of life. There were other volunteers, some veterans, some not. There were the VA staff who went above and beyond despite limited resources. And there were the veterans themselves, who often came back to visit even after their immediate needs were met. We started having monthly cookouts at our house. Linda, who'd been feeling sidelined during my depression, became the heart of these gatherings. She remembered everyone's names, their kids' names, their specific dietary needs. She created a space where people could relax and just be themselves. What amazed me was the mix of ages and backgrounds. Vietnam vets like me alongside Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, some even from the Gulf War and peacetime service. In civilian life, we might never have crossed paths. But here, united by the common experience of service and the challenges that followed, we found unexpected kinship. Marcus, that first young vet I helped, became almost like another son to us. He started bringing his own expertise to our volunteer group, teaching us about newer VA technologies and programs I wouldn't have discovered on my own. One evening, as about 20 people filled our backyard with conversation and laughter, Linda leaned over and whispered, "Did you ever imagine retirement would look like this?" Never. I'd imagined golf, TV, maybe some traveling. I never imagined purpose. I never imagined community. I never imagined feeling more useful at 70 than I had at 50. But that's the thing about purpose. It doesn't always look like what you expect. And it often finds you when you're busy helping someone else find theirs. About a year into this new chapter, something unexpected happened. I started talking about Vietnam. Not just the sanitized versions I'd shared over the years, but the real experiences, the fear, the confusion, the moral injuries that had haunted me. It wasn't planned. It happened organically, usually in quiet conversations with other combat vets who were struggling. In trying to help them process their experiences, I finally began processing my own. There's research showing that finding purpose later in life can actually help heal old traumas. Something about having meaning in the present makes it safer to revisit the past. I didn't know that then. I just knew that for the first time in decades, I could think about my time in Vietnam without immediately needing to change the subject or reach for a drink. One night, after a particularly intense conversation with a younger veteran, I found myself sitting alone on our back porch. I was crying, really crying, for the first time since I couldn't remember when. Not just for what I'd seen and done in Vietnam, but for all the years I'd spent running from those memories, keeping them locked away where they continued to poison parts of me. Linda found me there. She didn't say anything, just sat beside me and held my hand. After a while, she asked, "Is this good crying or bad crying?" I had to think about it. "Both," I finally said. but mostly good, I think. It's healing. About time, she said, squeezing my hand. She was right. It was about time. After almost 50 years, I was finally facing what had happened instead of burying it. And strangely, it was my new purpose that gave me the strength to do it. Looking back now, from the vantage point of several years into this journey, I can see patterns and truths that weren't visible to me when I was in the depths of that post-retirement void. First, purpose rarely announces itself with fanfare. It usually starts small, a flyer on a bulletin board, a chance conversation, a small need you discover you can fill. The key is being open to these moments when they appear, even when you don't feel ready or qualified. Second, your most valuable asset might be the very thing you've been trying to forget or overcome. My experiences in Vietnam and the decades I spent avoiding those memories became exactly what allowed me to connect with other veterans. Our wounds, when acknowledged, can become our gifts. Third, it's never too late to reinvent yourself. I know that sounds like a greeting card, but I've lived it. At 68, I thought my useful days were behind me. At 73, I'm now helping train new volunteer coordinators at 3 different VA facilities and speaking to retirement groups about finding purpose after career's end. And finally, perhaps most importantly, purpose isn't something you find once and keep forever. It evolves. It grows. Sometimes it changes completely. The key is to hold it loosely enough that it can change as you change. These days, I'm scaling back my direct veteran work a bit as some health issues have emerged. But that hasn't meant losing purpose. Instead, I'm mentoring younger volunteers, writing a simple guidebook for veterans navigating the system, and recording the stories of Vietnam veterans before our generation is gone. The purpose shifts, but it doesn't disappear, as long as I remain open to how I can serve with whatever capacity I have at each stage. So what's the takeaway from all this? What do I want you to remember from an old Vietnam vet who found his way back from the edge of meaninglessness? First, if you're in that dark place right now, whether from retirement, loss, illness, or any major life transition, know that it's both normal and temporary. The emptiness isn't a sign that your useful days are over. It's just a space clearing for what's next. Second, start small. You don't need to save the world. You just need to show up somewhere you might be needed. Volunteer. Offer your specific knowledge. Listen to someone who needs to be heard. Purpose often begins with presence. Third, be open to surprise. Your next chapter might look nothing like your previous ones. My construction management career had little obvious connection to helping veterans navigate bureaucracy. Yet here I am, finding more fulfillment in this volunteer work than in decades of paid employment. And finally, remember that it's not just about what you do, it's about who you become in the process. The purpose I found didn't just fill my days. It healed old wounds, created new connections, and made me more fully myself than I'd been in years. If you're watching this and thinking, that's great for him, but my situation is different, you're right. Your path will be your own. Your purpose will match your unique gifts, wounds, and circumstances. But the principles remain. Show up. Start small. Stay open. Trust the process. Life doesn't end with retirement. Sometimes, that's exactly where the most meaningful part begins. It did for me. And if a broken-down old Vietnam vet with a drinking problem and decades of unprocessed trauma can find his way to purpose, anyone can, including you. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, I'd love to hear yours in the comments below. And if you know someone struggling with finding meaning after retirement or any major life transition, please share this video with them. Sometimes, knowing you're not alone in the darkness is the first step toward finding your way to the light. Until next time, this is Jack Callahan, reminding you that it's never too late to discover what you're here for.